Calculating every move in chess can feel like running on a treadmill after eating at an Indian restaurant. So, in today's video, I'm gonna be trying to teach you how to look at chess from a more strategic perspective, how to identify strong squares, and start focusing more on pawn weaknesses, which is not only gonna make you a more efficient player, but I think also makes chess more fun. So, with that being said, I think we can dive right into the games. All right, welcome back, everybody. We are getting a black game, and opponents are still opening up with the queen's pawn. Interesting stuff. So, against e4, you must play the Caro-Kann. If you don't play Caro-Kann, chess.com will forfeit the game by default. But on d4, we're gonna be going for the Slav defense. So d5 and oh, hello there, knight c3. Will there be bishop f4? Oh, opponent. Bishop to f4. He's trying to Jobava London. All right. I guess we're still gonna play the same Slav setup. So we want to do bishop out, do these pawns, and develop our pieces. Not sure what to expect. Will it be f3? I normally recommend f3, but many players just go for cheap tricks. So cheap trick is not the way to do it. The problem with knight b5 is that it doesn't gain anything. Black just has a very easy way to shut down this little fried liver. So you can pause the video and think about it in case you don't know it already. And yes, it's not c6 because white is targeting the square, not the pawn. So you wanna do knight a6. And then we're gonna be able to get rid of this knight. So normally I would recommend for white to play f3 in this position. This is how I play it myself, and try to go for the pawn push, which I think I would have answered by h5. And once you do that, I think we're gonna be in general getting playable game as black. No need to go deeper. And okay, as a rule of thumb, we're gonna get rid of pieces that are placed in our half of the board. So I'm gonna do c6, and after the knight goes back, it's important to realize that white could be having this idea of eliminating the knight, doubling up the pawns. So how are we supposed to deal with it? There are a few ways. Moves like queen b6 or queen a5 could be considered here, but I think I will simply go back home. I don't go knight c7. Knight c7 is possible. It looks like it's at least developed, but the knight on c7 it's usually a pretty stupid knight. It has a hard time entering the game. So I think I will simply play knight b8, and then I will go e6, bishop d6 like nothing happened. We're just gonna act like, okay, my opponent put a knife on our throat. Now we're still friends. I don't remember that happened. I don't know, maybe you just lost a League of Legends games and you had a bit of an anger attack. I can totally understand that, but we can still be friends. So knight b8 and carry on with the game. Bishop to d3. All right. Attacking the bishop. Now we have two ways of dealing with it. Okay, three ways, let's say. So, easiest and most natural one would be to capture. But if you capture, not to mention you're developing white's queen, you're also giving him idea to take with a pawn and then expand. So I would be more inclined to choose between bishop back or pawn to e6. And I want to show you this pawn to e6 idea because particularly against these London systems, it's quite nice to allow the double f pawns. So if you're watching the Jobava series, I like to call this the boa snake structure. It's quite similar to how we played in the Jobava London. The difference is that I don't have the knight on c6, I have a pawn. but the ideas are going to be quite similar. So my opponent plays bishop g5, creating a pin. I'm going to develop the knight just to back up its brother. And then, okay, we can castle as well. Let's start h6. Just ask the bishop what he wants to do. Get into this habit of eliminating enemy pieces that are in our camp. And I think just castling and queen comes to e7. It's a bit unusual that there is this pin going on. I can actually play bishop e7 and really unpin if I want to, but I think I would have perhaps gone for queen c7 with a tempo and then try to look for knight e4. But he plays f3. Okay, let's see if you guys can figure out what is the drawback behind the f3 move. Quite important change in the position because, by the way, I already had bishop h2 and knight g4 was an interesting sacrifice, but king h3, it wasn't very clear. So f3, I guess he's mainly playing against those ideas. But the problem is pawn on e3 is not protected by a pawn anymore. So we immediately switch all of our attention to that. If there was no f3, my goal was to play for knight e4 and undouble the pawns, go for f5, f4 maybe. But now we have backward pawn. Backward pawn, we just put all of our heavy pieces on the backward pawn. Queen d3, defending and attacking simultaneously. Good move by my opponent. I could do queen e7 and offer a trade of these pawns, but I'm more inclined to go for g6. We just need to figure out whether he can break with e4 or not. A lovely scenario for me would be to just go g6, rook e6, queen e7, and then rook e8, and get a triple stack onto the backward pawn. You normally just win it by applying that procedure. But g6, e4, takes, f takes e4, knight takes on e4, I am pinned. Yeah, it's annoying. It's actually annoying. g6, weakening the knight, and then e4 can happen. Oof. Do we have g5 intermezzo? I'll have to take into consideration whether he can push e5 or not. Damn, this is getting pretty tricky. I'd like to keep it simple. So there is this move that I need to react against. Can I just play queen e7? Okay, just have to play it simple, I guess. I'm gonna trade f5 for e3. Just because now suddenly e4 no longer that appealing, I can take on e4 with the queen, which was not a possibility in the previous line. And okay, bishop f2. I love to see it because we no longer have to deal with that annoying piece. So I can take the time to protect with either g6 or even queen e6. I'll just do g6. Typical move in this boa snake structure. So as long as he doesn't break with e4, we're gonna put him under some pressure. Ideally, how I would love to maneuver the pieces here would be, let's say pawn h5, teleport this rook to e6, bring the other rook to e8, and teleport the bishop from d6 to h6. So everyone will be attacking e3. That's of course a bit long. So perhaps for this reason, c5 becomes interesting. c5 is a double-edged decision because it's allowing an isolated pawn after dc, but if I can take with a bishop and get a quick attack, it could actually be worth it. I don't see it happening, or at least it's not clear, so I'm just going to play queen f8. So queen is nicely placed on f8 because it's not blocking the connection between the rooks. And I think I'm just looking to either double up the rooks or take advantage of his last move. Why is b4 not a great move? What's the drawback? Problem with b4 is that it's weakening c4 square forever. Plus, potentially a hook. Now I'm gonna teach you a very nice concept in general, which is to fix the hook. Because a hook is a pawn that you can use to activate the rook. We can attack it, but he could perhaps push. Although that would give me pawn on a3. But just in general, it's very nice when you can just do b5. So you fix the hook and then you use the hook. It's very nice little strategic combo. So fix it and then use it. b5, a5. And this also reinforces knight b6, knight c4 ideas, which, hey, if we could teleport to knight on c4, it's also helping this cause of targeting backward pawn on e3. So we have two strategic assets to play for here. There is rook e6, queen e7 with an eye on the backward pawn, plus there is also weak square. There is also hook. These are the three things that really just shut down all the noise on the chessboard. I don't really care much about anything else. You don't need to calculate, let's say. Okay, I can just do a5. Let's just use the hook. If ba, rook a, he's gonna have isolated pawn on the a file that we can just use. The difference is that it's easy for him to protect the weakness on e3. It's gonna be more difficult to transfer his pieces on the queen side. So we're gonna have to use the concept of the two weaknesses here, which it's a very typical method in chess, because quite often attacking only one weakness will give him enough ways to defend. Okay, I could probably just go ahead and collect the free pawn, but I could also play a4 and play for the slow squeeze. Knight c4, rook there. Yeah. Okay, let's go for it. I don't want to take the free pawn. I just want to get to massage the pawn on e3. Could have just taken. It's a free pawn. AB, bishop takes. But I want to show you the two weaknesses. So his rook will be tied down to defend a3 forever now. And he's going to have to play knight d1 to not lose the pawn. I have a simple rook e6, rook e8. This is where the rooks belong. On knight f4, I think we can just take. He's gonna get double pawns, but the knight on c4, it's such a strong piece that it can be a winning asset. So please pay attention to this concept. If you have a knight on a strong square, so c4 is a strong square because it cannot be attacked by any of white pawns. But if you have a knight like that in the enemy side of the board, in white's half, we could be winning just because of that. Okay, knight f4. Knight's a little bit annoying. I wonder if we can take it. Can also maybe just get rid of it, no? It's weakening pawn on f5 if I play g5 right away. If I do go ahead and take... Okay, let's do go ahead and take and trade on e1. I'm noticing that the rook is simply overloaded. So we're just gonna have to use the e file. He could take with the rook and blunder a3. Although, if I try to take a3 right away, there might be some knight d5 trick. Yeah, he does it this way like expected. But just overall, I wanted to show you that we can play it in this fashion. So, now infiltration. Bishop f2 was a more accurate defense. But I think still his position was quite bad. So, expecting queen d1, queen f1, but simply queen e7, protecting the knight and targeting his knight as well. Happy to trade, and knight e2 will be cherry on top of the cake. So you can pause the video and find the win in that situation, trying to save the pawn. Okay, knight e2, rook a3, there is simple move as well. But there is also knight e2 juicier idea, if you can actually find it. You play knight d1, never mind. I have to do it like this. And then rook a3. There is knight a3 with a winning position, but watch out for the intermezzos, because I can just take for free, pretty much. And I get to win 2 pawns, not only one. Now I have outside the passer. So yeah, many things happened. We'll need to do a recap. I sped up a bit in the end, but we had many nice strategical assets that led to this effortless collapse of my opponent's possession. So bear with me for like another minute, I guess. Hopefully I'm gonna be able to convert the pawn and mate in 13 seconds, but should be able to. 93, 93, making the queen even more passive. Such a good piece. Good boy on c4. Good boy. That's a good knight. That's a good horse. It's a different breed. This is the kind of horse that would easily win the race. Can always bet on this horse, and it's just a money-making machine. Okay, knight e3, queen has to be tied down, and then the queen will be overloaded. Queen needs to defend mating square and promotion square. So tries queen f2 to just delay the mate for a bit, but I can trade and then promote. Bring queen to the second rank, or actually f1 square, even more precise. And should be many ways to mate, but taking the knight should be enough. All right. Well, we played with black just like we had the Jobava London, because we had boa snake structure, and we went for this squeeze. So many things happened. I think for him it was lesser evil to just take on f5, and my plan was to genuinely go back. And I mean, realistically speaking, it's gonna be probably impossible to win this position unless he makes some obvious mistakes. Everything is symmetrical and you're equal. But he didn't go for it. He played bishop f2, which was a mistake for him, because the e3 pawn, he basically missed on the possibility of trading off your weakness. He just decided, no, I'm not going to trade my weakness. I'm going to live with it for the rest of the game. And then I was preparing to double up, potentially, on the backward pawn. So I'm constantly eyeballing that guy. That is a backward pawn because it's placed on an open file, and it cannot be advanced, because whenever it's pushing, it will be lost. So it's a very vulnerable pawn, especially because it can't be protected by any white pawns. That's the main concept. So I'm eyeballing this guy. Okay, I'm keeping my eyes open. He plays b4. Now, when b4 is getting played instantly, c4 square is weakened. So suddenly, I'm looking at backward pawn and then premium square. b4 could also be, as I said, a hook. It can be targeted with a5 move. On a5 though, sometimes they can push. So important concept, fixing the hook, but also good for us in the long run, since, as I already mentioned, knight b6, knight c4 could be on the cards. He can never push this pawn because it will always lose a pawn after all the trades. And rook b1, a5, target the hook. Okay, I mean, I played a4, just I wanted to make it a bit more instructive. I can already collect that and start trading all the pieces. I wanted to show you that we can win simply by focusing on e3, because his rook will have to watch out for that forever. So I get my knight on premium square. Premium square, inside his half of the board. Just having a piece like that, it can give you a completely winning position because he's unable to get rid of it. On top of that, you add backward pawn. It's already a recipe for disaster. Knight f4, and in case he does nothing, you have simple plan of doubling up. Let's say he just does nothing, right, to prove the point. You attack this, he plays knight d1. How do you break through? Maybe already could be some tactics. Some knight a3, bishop b4 should be considered. Normally they can never survive with passive play. Maybe some f4 could be considered because knight d1 rooks are no longer connected. A move like f4 I would consider. Let's actually take a look. h5, sure, you can play it, improve queen. I wonder. Yeah, even f4 is already crashing. Yeah, probably best move f4, I think. You can see it there. Also, this is interesting. Maybe not best, but interesting. Because you have option to get 2 pawns and rook for 2 pieces. So, passive defense was not gonna do the job. And already it might be too late to do move like knight f4 in this case, because you can trade everything and then win pawn on a3. That's always a problem for my opponent. So after knight f4 we took, and then I simply think we're winning by taking advantage of the e-file. Because the rook has to babysit this pawn for the rest of the game. Take rook e8. If he was capturing with the rook, yeah, I can already start taking. There are no tricks. As I was mentioning, knight d5, but I get to win another pawn. Bishop e1, rook e8, trying to infiltrate. He allowed the rook e3, so it was more difficult to convert after bishop f2, but it's a position where, once again, he's completely tied down to defending weak square, infiltration square, defending weak pawn. We have premium knight, and we still have many ways to improve our position. So, rook e6, queen e7, those would be moves that I would play next, and perhaps look somehow to break with g5 in the future. Maybe maneuver this knight. Yeah, I would probably look to maneuver this knight somehow to d6, like knight e8, knight d6, protecting f5, and then go for g5 break. And slowly but surely you just squeeze him, and because he has a bad position strategically, he cannot go for any active prospects. So it's of course not easy to play like this in the beginning as a 1000 elo player, but it's very important to try to think of chess in this strategic fashion about pawn weaknesses, premium squares, hooks like we had before, and just by slowly collecting these kind of advantages, they're gonna be enough to win games without really having to win material or your opponent to blunder anything in the first place. So in the game, yes, of course, now at this point he was just unable to keep it together. I didn't get to attack on the second front anymore. I was just winning on one front. And 92 was allowing this beautiful combo with queen d4 and pick up the rook next. So I hope you guys liked this slow squeeze. You can use this strategy whenever you play with Jobava London or with normal London as well. Because in normal London, you will often meet this bishop tension and you can do e6. In London specifically, alright, in London it's okay to do it versus his London. Not if white had pawn on c4, because you don't want to have an isolated pawn. So yeah, hope you guys at least feel like you learned something from this game, and we can move on to the following one. Welcome back, everybody. Getting ourselves another black game against a 1000 Polish opponent. I'm just kidding. That's probably Indonesia. Yeah, there we have it. Okay, so he opens up with d4, meaning that we cannot Caro-Kann. Alright, the Caro-Kann only works against e4. That's what we do in a different video. And against d4, I recommend you start with d5. And when the pawn is attacked, you want to defend it with a c pawn. You want to be able to take back with a pawn in the center. Not the e pawn, because that would be blocking the bishop. So in order to try to play a black London, you want to keep opportunity for the bishop to develop, and only then play e6. So you want to develop, then lock the door. So first I'm going to start with a knight. Yeah, just in general, you kind of always want to start with the king's knight first, then the bishop, getting enough protection over the center. Sometimes if you start with a bishop, they can exploit you with double attack, queen b3 move, in that type of idea. So knight protection can really matter. And after knight f3, it is finally time. We get bishop f5, and the plan is to, as I already said, get a black London. In the meantime, if my opponent plays queen b3, we will generally parry that with queen to b6. And if c5, we just slide back the queen. That's the key detail. We're not opening up the path for his rook by exchanging queens. We're happy if he does it, but we're not going to provoke it. Now e6, creating the pyramid, and I can do knight d7 or bishop d6. Either move is fine. Let's do knight d7. I'm not afraid of a move like c5, although it's possible. It's not something that you should really be afraid of. On c5, you have even some probably quick queen c7, e5, or just simple plan to develop knight e4, bishop f6, and recapturing with the bishop on e4, of course, and look for e5 push. So c5, no need to be afraid of it. Plays h3, common, let's say, unnecessary moves for 1000 elo. We're gonna get the bishop out, and is this smelling like a black London? I think it's starting to smell like a black London. And my opponent went for a taking. Now, question for you, dear viewer or listener, in case you're watching chess videos without looking at the screen to see the pieces, in case you're that good, just in case you're 1000 elo and that talented. c5, where do you go? That's the question. You can go e7 or c7. The key detail is to keep the bishop on c7, to be eyeballing the enemy king in case of castle, while also supporting e5. So important idea. Now on cd, the best move for the London is to take with the e pawn, and I'll explain. In this case, it's kind of by elimination. Taking with the c pawn is bad because your bishop will be constantly harassed by the knight. So yes, in general, you want to take towards the center with a pawn, but in the London, this is a specific rule. You like to take e d5. It's specific for the London system. Normal London, not the Jobava. In Jobava, you don't have a choice because your knight is on c6 actually. So, okay, bishop d3. He offers a bishop trade. We have two ways to deal with it. I can either exchange, or I can slide it back to g6. Actually, there is a third way. I can also put my knight on e4 with the idea to be annoying and take with a pawn. So the main reason why this is nice is because after taking with the e pawn, let's say I can afford to play a move like knight e4, and whenever opponent tries to put more pressure on the knight, I can always do queen e7, and I get better control over the e4 square, which is a central premium square. Please notice that if my pawn is still on e6, I can never play queen e7 support the knight because the pawn is blocking that file. So now I would be getting direct access if needed. So I think I'm going to start castle. Same queen c2, I have a rook e8 idea in mind. And we have one potentially really deadly idea that's very typical for the London positions to attack. You want to do queen, queen, into bishop. And it can be made on a good day, on a blue moon, when the stars align. It can actually be checkmate. No, seriously though, it can really be checkmate. So I'm gonna start with this overprotecting move, rook e8, just making sure e4 is super well protected. As long as we have control over that, we're dominating the center. Meaning that, okay, you can look at it as this way. So how do you figure out which side is better? Let's talk center. What is the situation of pawns in the center? We can see it's one-on-one pretty much. But we do have a piece placed in the middle of the board, while our opponent doesn't afford that luxury. So simply because we afford and we have a knight in the middle of the board, it's a rather symmetrical situation. We are just better. We're having more space, more opportunities to direct our pieces. Thanks to that, I can do all kinds of ridiculous things like lifting a rook, or as I was mentioning, maybe bring my queen. I think that's what I'm going for. I'm not playing knight f6. This is like a common mistake in general. Sometimes even allowing knight e5. Not in this position. This knight is good that it's controlling enemy idea to put a piece in the center himself. So I'm gonna go for this. And yeah, I think that is a common mistake. So please feel free to pause the video and look for a juicy winning move. That's it's common that the problem with this move is that it's retreating. It's really retreating. So that was a red flag for me immediately. And I'll give you a hint. We have one piece targeting f2, and the queen is also indirectly attacking it thanks to the bishop. So assuming you were a good student and paused the video, I think knight f2 is pretty interesting. I'm just not really sure because he may have a clever defense with queen f3, but I should be able to do desperado knight. Aha, we do desperado knight. That sounds like a beard, not like a chess move, but it's gonna be good. I'm gonna show you in a second. Now, I'm just looking for alternatives, like bishop g4 doesn't really make any sense because he can just take intermediate. So I think we go for knight f2. Just exploiting this little idea. Also, maybe, yeah, it's a fine move. I could have also, if you fail to spot the tactic, if you just want to do backup move, queen g6, protecting everything and threatening to take, was also completely dominating, but you want to get used to watch out for these tactical shots, and this is the position where we need to be precise. So, yet again, pause the video in case you didn't first time, and look for the best move. Because if I take on c2, I'm not extracting the most value. He has queen f2 and I'm only up a pawn. So I can go for this intermezzo, take with a check, just stealing another pawn, and only then I will finally take the bishop, and we end up in a position with 2 extra pawns instead of only 1, which is just a huge difference. Very, very huge. You cannot understand how huge. Well, if sometimes he just has some chances of survival while being down a pawn, with 2 pawns, it's generally unheard of. Okay, rook f1. Let's give a check, sidestepping his annoying rook pressure and expecting queen g2. He should really look for trades because the situation is getting quite dramatic for his king. But pause the video and think about how to punish white if he is not careful. Or you can pause the video now and think about how to punish king f2. Because that is going to be stepping into a typical box mate. So it's going to be a square mate. It's like a Some people like to look at it like a pattern like this. To be honest, I didn't really learn everything like this as how to visualize it and pattern. I just got used as a kid to calculate. So I'm not entirely sure which is the ultimately best method, but yeah, we can kind of see that the queen cannot run away. But I saw recently while doing research, people refer to this as square checkmate, which is interesting. It's an interesting way to look at it. Now, if he was going king h1, this was also allowing potentially a skewer, and queen g2 would have allowed at the very least a convenient procedure to take, and then I would say probably just double up rooks on the open file. That would be a way to play it. I mean, rook e7, take with a rook on e4. I mean, we just have 2 extra pawns, and I think looking for f5, f4 to open up the situation. Although if he ever does something like this, you can also consider to perhaps reroute the bishop to pressure the pawn. Kind of no matter how you play though, black is gonna be winning quite easily as long as you trade the pieces. So yeah, what can I say? If your opponent doesn't allow Caro-Kann, the black London can be pretty deadly. Knight d2, allowing this juicy shot. But yet again, let's say you don't have the eye of the tiger that well developed. You just play queen g6, consolidating move. You're still in a much better position. Let's say he takes on e4, you take back with the pawn, keep attacking bishop. He could do what? Like king h1, let's say, so to sidestep. Fine. Carry on with our plan. Queen here. Boom. He's very likely to just do some kind of developing move, and all of a sudden this is gonna be big attack. But important, let me test you. Black to play and win. This is actually a reflex checkmate that you have no idea how many students I tested. Nobody knows this checkmate around like 1500, which is kind of crazy because it should be one of the first things that you learn in chess. So, black to play. What do you do? Think about it. Don't panic. The idea is, if you're looking for a hint, you don't want to let the king to run to Costa Rica, let's say. Because if you check, he just goes there, he just runs away. Then you're like starting to sweat, you're desperately looking for the checkmate might not be there, and things are bad from that point. You still have a perpetual. But the key way to do it, you have this position. Let's say the queen is staring at the enemy king like a horse, and you have a bishop, and he has a pawn on f2. This is the most basic checkmate. So first, you bring the king into the corner, and then you want to set up a mate on f2. So bishop goes to g3. Kind of sneakily. He's just doing a sneaky attack on the f2 pawn with a discovery, and then check. And this is just a reflex mate. If you remember this, it genuinely works all the time. You don't have to calculate it. Let's look at it again. So you have queen looking at the king like a knight with a pawn on f2, and you have a bishop. Bishop first. Bang. King in the corner. Bishop one step back. Discovery. And preparing a mate on f2. Setting up the table for dinner. Then there's gonna be a big dinner on f2. A big turkey on f2. With a mate. So, yeah. I hope you guys like this reversed London setup. This was normal London. It wasn't a Jobava, but still pretty good. So With that being said, I think we can move on to the following game. Welcome back, everybody. Getting a game with the black pieces facing 1000 elo opponent, opening up with d4. So we're gonna step in the center. Important to be aware that on king's pawn, only on king's pawn to e4, we Caro-Kann. If they play anything else, d4, English opening, reti, and a bunch of other dangerous names that you don't know, we try to play a Black London. So d5, e3. What does Black London mean? So we're gonna do knight f6 idea, bishop f5. We only play c6. Notice that I didn't start with the beginning move of the Caro-Kann because I want to play it only when white is threatening to get rid of our central pawn. So this is the center of the board. It's currently a one-on-one situation. My opponent is threatening to trade a side pawn for a central pawn, which would give us pretty much already a much inferior situation in the center. Who has more pawns in the center dominates the game. Most of the chess positions really do come down to that, which is why I waste a lot of time reminding you every game pretty much. Hopefully you can live with that. Are we good? You think we're chill? We can continue? Okay. All right. Now that this is consensual, my opponent just played queen to b3, which is not allowing me to play bishop to f5, not at all, because the pawn on b7 will be hanging. Well, as a general idea, when you are doing this Slav or Black London on queen b3, queen to b6 is going to be a nice way to protect the pawn. And knight to c3. So we have a choice. To take or not to take? That is going to be the question. Capturing is doable. However, we are not forced to. In fact, I would much rather love him to take and open up our rook. So because there is no more issue with the hanging pawn, I'm going to attempt to develop the bishop and play e6 next. Still somewhat hoping for a Black London, except we're going to be getting it in a queen trade. It's going to be more of like a London endgame. And my opponent plays c takes on d5. And this is the position where a lot of people from my experience would be going wrong. By simply going for pawn capture on d5. Problem is that our opponent can pretty much take advantage of this mistake by snacking a pawn. Because on queen takes on b3, he has knight takes on f6 intermezzo, and only then to recapture the queen. So here it's nice to exchange first, and the difference why I didn't trade in the past and I'm exchanging now, it's because all of a sudden, after he committed to moving the c pawn, he will be having double isolated pawns. So notice that if I take on b3, these pawns are pretty much together. I take now, there are no white pawns nearby. Those are double isolated pawns. So this is going to be a big weakening in general. And here you kind of have to know this trick on the recapture. We can take with a pawn or with a knight. Taking with a pawn allows him to jump, and it's pretty difficult to defend the forking square. So to avoid the last danger in the possession, this is everything you need to know. Not more than 7 moves. Take with a knight there and you're gonna be completely fine. This is very much okay for black to play. It's quite a theoretical position, to be honest. So it's surprising that we get it in a 1000 elo game. Alright, looks like a normal opponent, so just playing a game of chess. Chill guy from the UK. He checks me. He checks me, I can block with a knight, or I think it's even nicer to unpin by moving the bishop back. How do I want to play this? I could also just do the knight. I think I'm going to block with the knight, and I want to show you a nice idea. I'll show you a nice idea because after knight f3, there's going to be another common mistake. So you can try to pause the video and think about what would you play on knight f3. Pause the video. Don't cheat. I'm watching. Black needs to find a good move because from my experience, most people just pretty much ignore opponent's frat and they tend to go e6, forgetting that white could be increasing the pressure on the knight. And after knight e5, you can try to defend with rook c8, but rook takes on a7 would be available. So instead, because knight e5 is a frat, you have two moves. Bishop d7. It's a bit weird that I remember a game here, but I think that's an old Capablanca game. But I think even nicer, I like to just play f6 and just not give him any knight in the middle ideas. And now we're actually really safe. So maybe 7 moves and 1 little idea. That's all you need to know. Period. Okay, he castled. I'm going to do e6 now, no more problem with that move. And the bishop goes to d6, and I can actually use these pawns to expand. So, kudos for my opponent to being patient and not losing interest in the game while waiting for every simple move that we make, and it takes a minute. He starts with a knight move. Now, normally I do not want to give him the bishop for free. So you should aim to keep it. Move like bishop g4 or bishop c2 should come to mind. These are going to be the only moves to keep the bishop and not allow him to trade it for the knight. Bishop c2, it's quite interesting because it's not easy to protect the pawn. He might have to just play the ugly bishop a4. So I think we're going for it. We're going for a hike into the queenside mountains with a bishop. The bishop doesn't have a hiking backpack, but hopefully it's still gonna be okay. Hopefully it's still gonna be okay. It might be able to return to c4. And my opponent plays rook a3. He forgetty, but no regretty. I'm not gonna take the free rook. I'm gonna try to keep it more educational. I'm gonna give him a pass. I'm gonna go g5 and let's just do bishop back. Let's keep the game normal. I want to keep the position interesting to showcase the thematic way to push pawns. Okay, this is still there. We're going to ignore. Let me just develop bishop. Maybe that's going to give him a signal that the rook is dangerous. No? No. This rook has literally no peripheric vision at all. You know, some people... You try to scare them, you're next to them, but they just never notice. You cannot even do the scare. This is the rook. Okay, I'm just referring to some TikTok videos, but probably you guys are not gonna get it because you don't have the same brain rot. Okay. h3, g4. Problem with g4 is that it's attacking my bishop, but it will be giving us opportunity to open up the rook in the future. Rook is chilling. That's actually just a chill rook. I'm hating on it for no reason. That is just genuinely the most chill rook that I ever seen. I want to be as chill as the rook on a3. Nah, you kind of need a bit of survival instinct. It cannot be like that. He takes. I have no move but to recapture. And rook a6. Now, feel free to pause the video and find the problem behind rook a6. Problem with rook a6 is that it's aligning the rook on the same diagonal with this one. So I'll give you one more chance to try to exploit it. Okay, bishop d3 is tempting, hitting both rooks with a skewer. But after rook c6, he's also attacking the bishop. But I mean, we can probably just take his rook or do king d7 to begin with. But I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna do king d7. I don't need to. I don't wanna play off the winning free pieces. That defeats the purpose of this series. I wanna win with positional chess. I wanna teach you recurring middle game ideas and pawn breaks that you should generally be looking for. I think that's gonna be the most instructive. So bishop d2, I want to go for h5, so I'm just going to go for it. And the opponent needs to be careful, because the situation is about to open up and I have two razor-sharp bishops that are looking pretty dangerous. These bishops, I wouldn't underestimate them. Imagine you just go for a walk in Australia and you see like a massive kangaroo. Maybe because you see a kangaroo for the first time in your life, it may appear to be cute, but these things, you shouldn't mess up with them. Kangaroos are pretty buffed. So, King G2, opponent, not feeling the danger, and you should. This time, okay, finally, for the final time in this video, if you haven't already, pause the video and find the winning move. How do you exploit the rather, let's say, fragile enemy king side? The problem for him is that the knight is pinned, so I think we can go in. The bishop covers the rook is untouchable, the knight is pinned, he has only one king move. And then we can take free knight with a mating net. But the situation is so catastrophic that probably even rook h8 wins. Although, yeah, just gonna put him in the mating net. And this is why you don't mess up with kangaroos. Bishop on f3, about to deliver checkmate. b5, but yeah, just gonna be delivering the mate. No more time to mess around. And we just get a pretty easy Slav by genuinely going for the right pawn breaks. Thanks everybody for making it all the way into the video. And if you're looking for the perfect black opening to match your Slav that you just seen with, make sure to check out this Caro-Kann video. I'll see you there.